Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mandarin Blueprint podcast. I've got with me here today Peter, who has just finished level 12 of the Mandarin Blueprint Method, and we just sort of wanted to have a chat and see what his thoughts are about the system. So first of all, Peter, would you mind just introducing yourself to everybody?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Peter. I live in Mandarin Bateman in New South Wales, Australia, not far from Canberra.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's me, I guess.
That's exactly how I would introduce myself. Well, I'm Luke. I'm from here. That's me. Yeah. So what about what is it you do for a living, Peter? And like what made you want to learn Chinese?
Yeah, well, they're not necessarily related, but I work in defence. I was in the Navy for a long time, and about 5 years ago moved to private industry. I work now as a defence contractor. Wow. But somewhere along the way, I married a Chinese lady, Jingming. So that's where my interest in learning Chinese came from. This close to, I just missed out on a posting with the Navy to Beijing, which would have been an amazing opportunity, but it didn't happen in the end. But anyway, Jingming and I have been married for 8 years now, and I've been learning for most of those 8 years, but I don't think my standard reflects 8 years or where I could be from 8 years of learning.
Yeah, that's a pretty common story, and that's a great reason to learn, first of all. How's her English? Tingming's English. Obviously, it's good enough.
Her English is great. Yeah, her English is far better than my Chinese.
Yeah, and that kind of makes it harder, doesn't it? Especially when you're obviously living away, not living in China, and your wife's English is awesome.
Yeah, that's right. So we don't speak a lot of Chinese at home. She gets a bit sick of talking baby talk, is the way I think of it. The way she has to talk with me. But certainly when there's friends around, we have a lot of Chinese friends. And so I do. The only problem is, as long as they're not all Shanghainese, because otherwise they're speaking Shanghai dialect, which is what happens with Jingming's family. And that's a common thing too, I think.
Which that's unintelligible to anyone outside of Shanghai as well, including obviously Chinese people. So nothing to be ashamed of there. So that's an extra hurdle. But as long as you speak standard Mandarin, they of course have no problem understanding you, right?
No, that's right. Yeah. It's just difficult to get them to speak Mandarin when they're all together.
So then it would mean quite a lot for you to become to reach a good level of proficiency. What level would you like to reach? What's your final goal at the moment? This may change over time, of course, once you get further into the method. But where do you see yourself? What do you want to do? How long do you want to spend doing it?
Oh, I'd like to continue learning for the rest of my life. But I'd like to get to a good conversational level where, just the things that friends talk about when they're together, what's been going on, how's the weather? What have you been doing? Those sorts of things. I guess that, there's potential. I can see all sorts of potential business opportunities and defense-related work opportunities as well. But that's not really my primary interest right now. It really is just to hang out with friends.
This is a bit more of a fanciful question, I suppose. But what would it mean to you, do you think, to get there? To be able to understand everything that's going on, pretty much. I mean, there'll always be certain things you don't understand because of just not being Chinese culturally. Like references and things like that to certain things, movies you haven't seen, which is, that's a hurdle that I face as well sometimes. But generally being able to understand everything, being able to communicate what you want, even being able to read things that you might want to read, like what would that actually mean to you, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it'd just be finally fully being able to understand the world of my wife and where she's from and all of that. So yeah, I think it's just an electric feeling in a lot of ways to be able to have that second language and in an environment where I can use it regularly.
I think a big part of that would be consuming Chinese media stuff. Does your wife consume a lot? Does she watch a lot of Chinese TV, listen to Chinese music, that sort of thing, read Chinese books?
She doesn't read a lot. She does watch a lot of through the internet, Chinese TV and things like that. And I've watched a few little programs. I can't remember the one. There was like a red-headed American girl who's with a Chinese family or something. Can't remember what that's called, but there's a whole series of them.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not Happy Chinese, is it like quite old one, or is it a new one?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it might be Happy Chinese.
I think, yeah, because it's quite an old one, isn't it? I've seen that. It's like, it's made, I believe that's on the BBC website or something like that. Yeah, it's made for, I think it's made for learners, isn't it? It's like a very sort of
yeah, that's right. And it does stop and explain a few grammar points in mid-episode and then continue, sort of thing.
Yeah, a few actors from that show actually are in proper Chinese TV shows, you know, as well. So for me personally, you know, I watch a lot of Chinese stuff with my wife now, Chinese movies, Chinese TV shows, and that's you know, it's a way of connecting more, and it's also a way of learning Chinese and understanding Chinese culture, because a lot of Chinese TV shows are very real. They're not very fanciful. You know, there's no Game of Thrones and things like that. It's usually just about kind of like, you know, single woman in the city, making it, or like, these two people's marriage are having difficulties because one wants to work and the other one wants to work as well, and they have a kid, and just very real and down to earth. You understand a lot about Chinese culture at the same time. So that, I think, if you're interested, that would be a good window for you. Once you start getting past the foundation course, phase 5, you start being able to understand a lot more.
Because I guess the only TV we've watched together is Fei Cheng Ura, which I don't think that's reflective of anything real.
No. Oh, Phil was on that show. Do you know that?
Yeah. Oh, was he really?
Yeah, he was a contestant
really good fun,
years ago. A friend of ours was the Deng Wang, the Light King. He was like this. He's a male model, and like his Chinese is better than ours. Let's put it that way. And he was the only contestant, either foreign or non-Chinese or Chinese, to ever have all of them leave their lights on the whole way.
Oh, wow, okay.
Charming.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's just a little tidbit for you. That Phil did not become the Deng Wang though. But he still won a holiday, which is nice. But yeah, that's not exactly. I think I'd rather do a lot of worse things than a lot of other things than watch Fei Cheng Wu for an evening. There are some good shows out there. So tell me about your experience with the method here. So how long does it take for you to learn a Chinese character at the moment with the hands and movie method, roughly, on average?
Oh, right now, just working through the lessons, I mean, it's probably only taken me 5 minutes to construct the movie, if you like, and all the rest. I ran into a bit of a problem. I was getting a bit ahead of what Anki was then showing me. I've actually I'm learning to drive Anki as I go. I've just upped the number of new cards it'll show me to try to keep at the same pace. Because what I was finding, I wasn't getting the reinforcement of seeing the characters I've just learnt for a few days because of the rate that I was feeding in new characters, if that makes sense.
So you mean you were going on the course, you were going really fast, but you weren't reviewing?
Then I wasn't seeing those characters again in Anki for 3 or 4 days. And it was quite often I would have forgotten them by then.
Okay. That's no big deal. Forgetting is a part of remembering. So one of the things you could be doing is you could be maybe either leaving too little a gap, like you're leaving too big a gap after you learn the character in your mind to when you review it the first time or the second time. So like, so what you should be doing really is that if you say you learn 5 characters in a session, you immediately, as soon as you finish your session, you immediately go and review them, spend them in your flashcard system, review them, and then they'll come up again tomorrow. And then when they come up again tomorrow, that's sort of the crunch time. That's the important one. Do I remember everything about this character that I need to remember the next day, 24 hours later? And if you do, be very honest with yourself. Be very strict. You know, do I actually remember? You know, you can take a minute or 2 if you want, and then just hit hard if it takes a while. And then really try and notice and be present. Don't rush through them. Present in the moment, because that's the very important one. You know, and then if you get it right, then you have actually got it right. Then it will appear again in 2 days, and then 4
Yeah,
days.
yeah,
It's pretty much
yeah.
double, I think, every single time, or
Yeah, I think
250%. So a bit more than double.
Yeah.
Is that what you've been
Yeah,
doing?
I think it's just that initial. Somehow, when I
Mm.
activate the cards in Anki, because of the number of new cards I'm allowed to come in at the time, and I was also doing the pronunciation course at the same time, so there was competing. I think I've just got to learn how to set up Anki a little bit better, so that I see the cards straight away.
Possibly. And also, yeah, pronunciation is a big part of it. Do you think you've got the grips of at least the spellings of pinyin at this point?
Oh yeah.
Good. Yeah, I think it's a learning curve. Anki can be a little bit of a learning curve. We'll be moving on from Anki hopefully soon.
Okay.
Our own system for reviewing, which will be much more simple for initial users, because Anki is fantastic, but there's a learning curve to it, and for some of our members who aren't good with technology, or they've got enough on their plate, and learning Chinese itself is already quite a challenge. So then we add
that's right, yeah,
learning how to use this software. So we're working on that. Don't worry. But I would say, yeah, just give it another week or two of doing this, and focus a bit more in the moment whilst you're reviewing. And if you still have issues, send screenshots, maybe even a screen share. I can teach you how to do that if you're not sure which website it is. Loom.com is a really good one. Just do a screen share of your review and just narrate it and send it through to us what the issue is, and we'll send you one back, and we'll sort it out for you.
Okay.
So nice. So what would you say about the method? Just give me your general thoughts about where you are, the progress you're making. Just just tell me how you're feeling about it, your experience so far, just generally.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I've just today completed level 13, so I've just started getting into the reading of sentences.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I guess I have. I mean, I've been learning in different ways for a long time now. So, but I started with the pronunciation course, and I found that that picked up a few things that I just hadn't even been taught before. Some of the mechanics of exactly where you put your tongue was really, really helpful.
Good.
And even just some really basic things, which I guess I'd kind of knew but didn't consciously know, like that the third tone really isn't very often pronounced the way it's taught to everybody.
Yeah.
That was the first time I'd ever, when you were explaining that, was the first time I'd ever encountered that being taught directly. And
going through that and creating that course, that's basically what I was thinking the entire time. It was like, what didn't I get taught that should have got taught, that I only realized later? And luckily I have quite an ear for pronunciation, so I naturally sort of, and most people do really, like, they figure it out subconsciously but not consciously, but a lot of people, they fall through the gaps and they fall through the cracks, and they end up developing these bad habits because no one specifically told them this certain thing. Or teachers, just because they're native teachers, they don't think to tell you certain things because they know it instinctively. They were never taught it. And they teach you what the textbook taught them about teaching. So again, so yeah, I'm glad that worked out for you.
So definitely the pronunciation course taught me reinforced a lot of things really well for me. And then using the Hansa movie method, in particular in remembering tones, I find is really, really helpful. And so I think I've pretty much got the hang of that now, and I do get that feel of. In fact, I just heard you speaking today. It was one of the videos towards the end of level 13 about using Anki as not worrying about getting the movie perfect right away, but letting Anki lead you to where things are falling down, where something you're not remembering or whatever. And I'd already been starting to do that. I kind of wait till I get to the reviews and see which things I remember and try to latch onto what it is that I'm putting in there that's helping me remember, and where it is that I'm falling short, not having enough levels of detail or whatever in the movie to really anchor things. But so that the Hansa movie method's been a real revelation for me as a method of remembering everything about the characters. And now I've just had that very first early taste of reading the sentences, and that's been great compared to everything I've done before, which I think is the typical what almost everybody's done, having passages in a textbook, and you really probably about 50% of the characters or more you don't understand, so you're spending all your time looking up characters rather than reading and understanding, which is, so just today going through those sentences and pretty well comfortably being able to understand and comprehend everything except for those few top-down words has been great just on the initial taste. So I'm really looking forward to getting my teeth into more of that.
Yeah, and don't be intimidated by the amount of cards that you unlock at 13, because we kind of save up all the sentences, as you probably know. Yeah, because we can't give you sentences between 1 and 12 because there's not quite enough characters or words to make any good sentences. So we sort of save up with all the words that you learn throughout 1 to 12, and then suddenly just dump them all on you at level 13. So don't worry, there won't be that many every level.
Yeah, so I was wondering about that. In the future modules, when you learn a new character and some new vocab, do you then get the sentences kind of at the same time or immediately after?
Yeah. So it's you can do it how you like. You can just go through the whole course and just learn characters and then go back and then learn words and sentences afterwards. It's up to you. But generally the course is designed that you learn a character and that unlocks however many words depending on how many characters you learned before. So you only unlock a word when you learn both or all characters within that word, right? And it's a common word, of course, within the top 1,000 foundation course, phases 1 to 5. But then after level 13 and beyond, you also see a lesson with the words in context. And these sentences are written, again, by our writers based on characters and words you've already learned. And there's a few top-down words. So there'll be words that you haven't learned the characters for yet. You will, of course, but we call those top-down words. But generally, you've seen those words a lot in context in other sentences at that point too. So it's not like they're completely alien to you. You've seen them, you've seen the translation, etc. So we provide the pinyin and the translation for those, but we don't provide the pinyin for anything else because you've already learned it. So, and those top-down words, we're working more and more on decreasing those. So, which is obviously tougher earlier on because again, you don't have the level of vocabulary. So it's really quite tough to make grammatically correct sentences with such a small vocabulary, but we've done the best we can and we'll keep working on that.
I've had a chuckle at some of the sentences.
But
it's great not having an opinion. I mean, that is such and that's what I find actually watching the TV shows and movies that I have watched. When they have subtitles, all I'm doing is reading the subtitles, not even watching the movie sometimes. I find that distracting.
I do that in English as well. When I see the English subtitles, I'm just reading the English. That's right.
It's
really hard not to. But it's
great not having an opinion with those sentences. That's fantastic.
I'm glad you feel that way. It's quite mind-blowing when you go through that transition from individual characters and words to reading entire sentences and understanding the meaning. It's pretty special. And we try to give you that feeling as early as possible, rather than waiting like me and Phil waiting a year and a half or 2 years of struggling and then finally being able to sort of work stuff out. Through a lot of looking up stuff, like you said. Which reminds me, like, I'm curious, you spent 8 years before that. How long have you been on the Mandarin Blueprint Method so far?
Only a few months, maybe not even a month, maybe not even 2 months.
1 or 2 months, right? A few weeks. You said you were learning 8 years before that. So what were you doing? What sort of thing were you trying to do during those 8 years?
Well, I mean, it was a bit hodgepodge. I mean, when I first thought about learning, there was just someone in the local neighborhood, a Chinese woman, who's become a good friend, sort of advertised in our little local newsletter that she was interested in teaching people Mandarin. But she wasn't really a qualified teacher, so she was winging it a bit. But we had a nice little group who learned, and we really actually did pretty well with the basics of pinyin with her and pronunciation. Then I started doing some courses here in Canberra, which there was about 4 of us, but then that fell apart because 4 was their minimum and one of the guys dropped out, so they didn't want to run the course anymore. So I moved to tried a whole bunch of tutors with varying degrees of success, and finally found one I liked, who was living in Tasmania. He was a Taiwanese guy, and that was working really well, except my internet, especially on a rainy night, is so terrible. We were having a lot of blips and frustrations. Anyway, his life changed. He wasn't able to teach me anymore, and I've sort of picked up some people who are students here at the Australian National University who were tutoring on the side, and some of them were good, some of them were great. So kind of meandering, trying all different sorts of things. I was also teaching myself characters. I don't know, have you seen this book?
Subtle. I've heard of it.
Yeah, it uses a sort of a memory palace method. But the problem is it's constructed for you. It's not, you're not building it from your own experiences and putting your own places and characters there. So it kind of fell away for me eventually. So what have I been doing? I've been a bit of a jumble of all sorts of things, and kind of continually getting to, I don't know, a beginner intermediate level, and then something happening where I've had to change the method, and I haven't been game enough to jump back into a new course or whatever at that level. So I've kept on dropping back and building myself back up, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Very common.
Yep. And I've actually found the last year or so, I haven't really been doing any active learning, but I've found just hanging out with my wife and her friends and listening to them, things are going in better than they were when I was actively trying to learn certain things. So that's why I was kind of got excited when you were talking about concentrating on input initially, because that was my own experience, that just doing that, not deliberately, but just because of the way my situation was, that was actually seeming to be more effective for me.
Yeah. And being able to just sit there and listen and not feel the obligation to say stuff and show Chinese or anything, and sort of just anything that's basically a pressure that you're putting on yourself psychologically. Just if you can just relax and enjoy consuming the language, then you'll naturally start to output it.
Yep.
So I think you've got the right sort of frame of mind there, personally. So generally, going into the method, because I'm not sure how you found us, but when you heard about us or read about us, were you skeptical about what you were getting yourself into? Were you skeptical about us and our claims, for example?
Well, if I had skepticism, it was, I knew that I wasn't, that you can learn so many characters in 3 months or 6 months. I was skeptical about me going at that sort of pace. But so I heard about you. I heard you on the You Can Learn Chinese podcast.
Oh, right. Nice.
Which, I listen to Seneca podcast a lot, and they led me to You Can Learn Chinese. And then I heard you. And when you started talking about using a memory palace to memorize characters and things like that, that really tweaked my interest. So if anything, it wasn't skepticism at that point. It was like, I've been looking for something like this, because another podcast I listened to called Intelligence Unshackled is a psychologist who talks about all these sorts of things and how we don't really leverage the way our brains work in the traditional ways of learning. And he talks a lot about memory palaces as a way of memorizing things. So as soon as I heard you speaking about that, I thought to myself, well, I've got to give this a go. So I went and signed up for the free trial and went from there. And so far, it's definitely seems to be working for me.
Good. What about the social aspect, I suppose you could say, like the community, the forum, the comments, the podcast? Are you into all that? Do you get involved much there?
No, not really. I don't know. I'm just an older geezer who's not quite into that sort of thing. I do read some of them, not a lot of them, but usually at the end of each lesson, I look at the sort of first few, and I have got some really good tips from that. I also always feel like, because that's been going for a while, I'm always, because I'm not going to, it's just not me. I'm not going to, if I've got a question, I don't want to ask it there because I figure somebody's already asked that. And I don't want to be that annoying idiot who asks something that's already been covered. But at the same time, I don't really necessarily even know how to search through the previous comments and stuff to find that sort of stuff. And at any rate, that's not my personality type to get involved in those sort of groups.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. But well, I do look at what's happening there.
I like to just get on with it, do my thing, and email if I have an issue, that sort of thing, stay in the background.
Yeah, that's right. But there's certainly been some really useful things that I picked up there, especially sometimes if I'm not quite being able to arrive at a little storyline or anything for a movie. Sometimes I'll look through some of the suggestions there, and that'll lead me down a certain way, which can be useful.
Have you got any ways that we could maybe improve the course based on your experience so far? No, great, awesome. Next question.
No. Well, no, I hadn't thought about that, and there's nothing that really jumps at me.
Okay, good.
If I think of anything, I'll let you know.
Brilliant. That's not in private. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Praise in public, criticize in private.
Exactly. That's the formula for success. So generally, Peter, would you recommend MB? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
No, most definitely I would, for anyone that that I knew who was interested in learning Chinese and looking for a platform. For all the things we've spoken about already, I think that starting with the pronunciation and learning the pinyin and all those basic building blocks is really important. And not that I've got huge, vast amounts of experiences, but in the experiences I've had, your teaching there has been the best I've seen. And I think, as you say, all my previous learning has been from native speakers who don't necessarily understand the challenges of a non-native speaker in just making the sounds of Mandarin, whereas a non-native Mandarin speaker like yourself has a better grasp and a good way of explaining that. So, I think that's been great. And yeah, your Hands Are Moving method, all of that. So most definitely I would recommend you guys to anyone else.
Thanks a lot, Peter. I really appreciate that. Is there anything you'd like to add before we finish up here today?
No, I don't think so.
Nice, awesome. Well, it's been great. I can't wait to see how you do as you progress through. Because as you might be aware, we'd like to do several of these interviews depending on whether you make it through like the foundation course, the intermediate, not whether, but when you make it through the foundation course, the intermediate course. So after the phase 5 is done, or after the intermediate, we'd like to have another chat, follow up with you, and
for sure,
and get your thoughts there, maybe give you some advice and to get through to the intermediate and advanced levels.
All right, great, sounds good. Looking
forward to that. Thanks a lot, Peter, for your time today, and hope to chat soon.
All right, Luke, cheers.
Bye.